find more elk. Elk psychology. This is what I teach. How they think, how they act, and how they smell. You're not going to be frustrated during the hunting season checking out new spots because you have done all your scouting before the hunt begins. Transform the way you think to be 100% committed into going to the mountains and finding that elk. You'll have the confidence to go down into the deepest hole because you know that's where the biggest bulls are. You know where you're going, you know what you're doing. These are proven principles that never change. You will be able to find elk all the time. You're not going to be frustrated running around the forest because you will have a game plan. Elk psychology. This is what I teach. How they think, how they act, and how they talk. How many elk did you find during this last season? How many bulls did you pass on because you decided not to shoot it because you know you're gonna find another one? You're gonna find a bigger one. You can go and find 10 more. In this video, we're gonna break down 3 things that are gonna help you find more elk during the next archery or rifle season. The first thing is knowing the area that you will be hunting. It's very important to scout all of your hunting spots, all of your areas, the honey holes that you're going to be hunting before the season begins. If you don't scout before the season begins, you're going to get there on the opening day and you will spend your season scouting instead of hunting. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be running through the mountains like a wild man, checking out different spots, being frustrated, anxious, depressed because you did not scout. You don't know what you're doing. You don't have a game plan. You don't know where the animals have moved through or to. So it's very important to know the area that you're going to be hunting. The second thing is knowing the animal. You have to understand elk psychology. You have to know how they think, how they act, and how they talk. Knowing the area is going to help you navigate through that terrain faster, quicker, and you're going to be able to check out all those rutting spots, feeding areas really quickly without wasting any time. You're not going to be frustrated because you're not scouting during your hunting season. You're spending your time hunting instead of driving around, checking out new spots, being frustrated by other hunters. By knowing the animal, you're going to be able to understand how they think, how they act, and how they talk, how to call them in. And the final thing in this video that we're going to discuss is being consistent. I don't even know how to spell that word. We're going to learn the area using 3 techniques. The first one, e-scouting. And that is everything you do from your phone by scouting on Onyx Maps, on Go Hunt, on Google Maps. You are scouting from above. You're looking at all the streams, creeks, rivers, draws, canyons, ridges, timber, feeding areas. You're trying to identify all of that from looking above. Where you want to put a trail camera, where you want to glass, where you think the elk are going to feed, where you think the elk are going to bed. You mark all of that on your maps. I use Onyx and Google Maps. Mark everything on your map with pins so you can go, when you're there in the area, you can walk through and check it out. E-scouting is very important if you want to identify the areas. What is steep canyons? What are the steep ridges? What are the glassing spots? Where do you think the elk are going to travel through, especially saddles? Because when 2 mountains meet and there's a saddle, that's where all the animals come through and they're going to go over the ridge. The next method is I call bee scouting. And bee scouting is your boots on the ground scouting. That is when you go to the area, you camp there, you fish the creeks, you do everything presently in the area to understand maybe a burn through, to understand the terrain, how long it takes you to get from point A to point B, because a lot of times we overestimate what we can do, and once we're there in the mountains, we see how steep it is, or we see the inaccessible spots, closed gates, closed campgrounds, a fire comes through, burns everything, and you thought there's going to be perfect elk habitat, and it's actually a perfect desert. That is everything you do by being in the area, going bear hunting, going cougar hunting there, maybe just camping, taking out your family on hikes. You're scouting your hunting spots, so when the season opens, you're not scouting anymore. You're hunting. You're focusing on those areas where you think the elk are going to be. And the third and final thing in scouting the area is you are going to be looking for elk sign. That is their poop, their tracks, and especially most importantly, their rutting grounds, their raked trees, their rubs from the previous season. If I find a couple of spots that have 5 to 10 trees that are completely demolished, rubbed by the elk from the previous year, I know most likely they're gonna be there this season as well. I'm gonna put a pin on my map. I'm gonna mark that so I can check it out during the hunting season. When I find rubs, I also wanna find water nearby and cover. So as you're doing your bee scouting, boots on the ground scouting in that area, you are gonna be looking for elk sign. In my hunting areas, I'm looking for rubs because I know if I find rubs, that means the elk have been there in September. And since I archery hunt in September, I know that the elk are gonna be there again. If I find rubs from the previous year, most likely they're gonna be there next year. Sometimes I find old tracks from a couple of months or from the previous season. Those are the perfect areas for hunting. So this is how you scout the area, because if you know the area that you are going to be hunting, you're not going to be frustrated during the hunting season, checking out new spots, hopping in your truck, driving somewhere a couple hours away, constantly looking for something new, because you have done all your scouting before the hunt begins. And that is going to skyrocket your chances of success because you will confidently walk into your hunting spot and get to it instead of looking at your maps, checking out new spots, loading everything back into the truck and driving somewhere, and then you don't like that spot either, load your truck again and drive somewhere else. And I've done that before when I did not scout the areas. Highly recommend scouting the areas, understanding the areas that you're going to be hunting, knowing the animal, elk psychology. This is what I teach. How they think, how they act, and how they smell. No, I'm just kidding. How they talk. So, first one is how they think. The elk are playing a survival game. They're in survival mode 24/7. They have bears, they have cougars, they have humans as predators, hunters that they have to avoid. So they are playing in survival mode. That is why you don't see them in the open, during the day. They move out from their feeding grounds into the thick timber right before the sun rises. And if we understand how they think, we can find them. Since they are in survival mode 24/7, they're constantly thinking about finding spots that they will feel safe. That is why they go down into the deep canyons or climb the steepest mountains and ridges. And I've seen elk climb such steep mountains that I thought only mountain goats climb those steep cliffs. And no, I saw a cow and a calf just completely take off and run up that steep cliff with rocks falling down 50, 70 feet, and they were totally fine. But why did they choose to go there? Because they feel safe. They are playing in survival mode all the time, so they have to find spots where they feel safe. That could be the thickest timber or the most steepest canyon, a big ravine. So they are gonna go into those spots. When you understand that, you're gonna be willing to go to those spots because first, no other hunter is going there. Second, that's where the elk are. The second thing is how they act. This is very important during the rut because they act differently in September and early October than throughout the whole year. When you understand how they think, you will also be able to understand how they act. Why is that elk going there? Why is he traveling 5 miles a day looking for hot cows? Why is he going to that deep canyon? Is it because there's water or is it because all the cows are over there? You have to learn how the animal acts, and that you can do by observing them or by going to your hunting spots and looking at the tracks where they travel and which areas they avoid. The final thing is how they talk. Elk are really social animals, so they communicate vocally just like people, and they communicate a lot through their emotions. When you're around elk enough, you'll be able to understand when they're upset or when they're mad or when they're challenging, especially in September. They put in a lot of emotions into their vocals. When you learn those sounds that they make, then you will know how to respond to them and what sounds you should make, how to bugle, how to cow call, or when not to bugle. A lot of times what I do is I actually just make elk noise. So I will rake a tree with the stick, I will stomp on the ground, I will throw something into the bushes, roll some rocks, and that gets them really curious during the archery season because they know that bull is either marking his territory or presenting himself to a hot cow. They can't resist. They have to come and check you out to see who are you. I don't even challenge the bulls. I just start acting as though there's a bull and a cow talking to each other. And he gets so curious, he has to come and check me out. And that is when I am able to put an arrow through his vitals. So to wrap up this video, we're going to talk a little bit about being consistent. What does it mean to be consistent in your elk hunting? That does not mean that you hunt elk 365 days a year. What it does mean is that you're putting your effort into exploration, education, and practice. And by exploration, I mean you're constantly e-scouting, you're exploring the areas, you're exploring maybe new areas that you want to hunt later or as your backup areas for the hunting season in case, a fire comes through and burns or an area closes down. You're able to move to your backup area really quickly without spending 3, 4, 5 days scouting another area. Because you've been there before, you can easily go in and start hunting. Education is you're educating yourself on the elk's behavior, how they communicate, how they talk, and you're constantly feeding your brain with new information about elk. There are a lot of hunting classes that you can join, even more free information on YouTube and books that you can get at zero cost. But you're constantly feeding your mind with new information about the elk's behavior that will help you harvest an elk. And the final thing is practice. You have to practice your shooting skills with your bow or your rifle. You have to practice your calling skills, your calling techniques, because if you don't practice, when the shot opportunity comes up, when that elk presents himself and you miss, you're gonna kick yourself, you're gonna be disappointed. Knowing the area, knowing the animal, and being consistent are the top things that I have found to help me go and find bulls every single year during archery season. I understand the frustration of hunting for many years in a row, not being able to find an animal. On the last day of the hunt, just walking to my truck, just praying, God, please make an elk jump out of the bushes so I can shoot it. But that is not how elk hunting goes. God does do miracles, but that is not how elk hunting goes. Elk hunting is hard work, and you can't rely just on your hopes. You have to put in the work that it takes. That is why there's so many hunters that hunt for many years. They're not getting anything. And then there's the top 5% of hunters that go and they're able to get an elk every single year because they understand these three things. They know the area, they study the areas constantly, and they're looking for new spots to hunt. They study the animal, how they think, how they act, and how they talk, and they're always being consistent in it. Think about it like this. A guy who goes to the gym, he goes to the gym every single day. He tries new exercises. He puts in the work, he studies how his body works. He studies the diet, he tries different things. He is very consistent. Every single day he goes to the gym. And then there's the guy who's somewhat interested in working out and he goes once in a while, once a week. He doesn't really read about it. He doesn't do any diets. So obviously we're gonna see the results from the guy who goes more to the gym, he educates himself about it, and he's consistent, versus the guy who goes to the gym once in a while, hopes for results. These are proven principles that never change. Find more elk. If you study the area, the animal, and you're always consistent in it, you will be able to go this next season and apply them, and you will be able to find elk all the time. You're not going to be frustrated running around the forest because you will have a game plan. You know where you're going, you know what you're doing, and if everything crashes, you have a backup plan. You will be able to go into the mountains and find more elk. Every month we host free Zoom calls where hunters come together to learn more about elk. It's absolutely free. We don't try to sell you anything. It's a quick lesson just like this. We break it down, and then you can download a PDF of your calling techniques or scouting techniques. And that is just to help beginner elk hunters get into the game, understand it, get better, get their skills better, have a bigger picture of what elk hunting is about. Click on the link and sign up for a free Zoom call. We do it every month. how you can change your mindset as a hunter, transform the way you think to be 100% committed into going to the mountains and finding that elk, where you will have the confidence to go down into the deepest hole because you know that's where the biggest bulls are, or climb to the top of the ridge because you know that's where the elk are going. It's a quick lesson, just like this. Click on the link to sign up for the free Zoom call. Also, subscribe to our channel if you want to learn more about elk, if you like our videos. Comment with your questions or with the next topics that you want us to discuss to help you find more elk.